Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Cole Zwicker, here to break down the NBA and NBA draft as only he can do. Cole, how is it going, buddy? It's been good to talk to you for a couple of minutes before the podcast, and it's good to get a chance to talk to you again. We texted a little bit this weekend, but not to the normal levels of craziness.
Yeah, it's been kind of a brutal weekend, man. The Seahawks got their asses handed to them yesterday. I was at that game. And then the Steelers, of course, that whole catch rule bullshit with the NFL. So I'm taking the week off from social media and Twitter. I just can't do it. I've been better, but it's good to be back, and I always enjoy talking to you every week.
So, yeah, I just didn't watch any NFL yesterday until the night game. I continue to be struck with how bad the Raiders are in terms of coaching. Like they just do so much stupid shit in terms of penalties, and they run this weird ass quick read offense with Derek Carr and don't let him throw the ball and let loose. It's a weird team. Anyway, though, this is not a football podcast. This is the basketball podcast. We're presented by our friends over at MyBookie and DraftKings. We are going to talk about the Houston Rockets at the top here. As I mentioned, I wanted to talk about them last week, but what ended up happening with me last week is my girlfriend Laura works for a great company called Lyft and needed me to volunteer basically from Thursday onward through Sunday for this big event that happened yesterday. So it was awesome. Like 100 low-income families across Los Angeles got a bunch of gifts for Christmas, and we're going to be able to provide for their children, which was awesome. It just took up 40 hours of my week by itself. So I had to put the podcast on the back burner, but we're going to talk about the Rockets here. Then we're going to get into some NBA draft stuff, particularly Trae Young, Landry Shamet, maybe some Cincinnati stuff, maybe some Mississippi State stuff. And then generally I'll just ask Cole about what he's seen throughout the course of the week. Cole, let's first start though with those Houston Rockets, who are now 24-4 this season. They are very, very good at NBA basketball. They are really right now probably the best or second best team in the league, depending on who you ask. What have been your overall impressions of the Houston Rockets so far?
Well, they're just a freaking buzzsaw, man. I mean, They're second in offense, seventh in defense. The only other team to do that is the Warriors. It's really simple offense. Honestly, they just have so much on-ball talent as far as between Harden, Paul, and Gordon that it doesn't really matter. Yeah. So what I like most about them, I think, is that they're multiple, so they can beat you in different ways with different lineups. Their signings this offseason were just through the roof. I mean, Mute for the minimum, Tucker, they can play the 4 and 5 and just give them so much flexibility switching against Warrior smaller lineups. They have 6 guys shooting over 37% from 3. And they're just so tough, again, because they can just stagger Chris Paul and James Harden. They can play together because both can shoot. They can play Gordon with those guys, which they haven't done a ton of this year. And those lineups are ridiculously successful. Yeah, their blueprint to win is just obviously typically, it's like the typical standard of modern NBA basketball, spread, pick and roll, high percentage shots. And they just have, with Chris Paul, what he's given them and how good he looks physically, they're just incredible.
So the craziest thing to me right now about the Houston Rockets is they have the best lineup in the NBA among lineups that have played at least 150 minutes. There are, a few of those, not like a crazy amount of those. I think there are like 30 or so. Every team has one lineup basically that has played at least 150 minutes this year. It's James Harden, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, Trevor Ariza, and Clint Capela. They're a plus 22 when they're on the floor together per 48 minutes, or per 100 possessions, I'm sorry. That is bonkers to me, that they have a lineup that does not feature Chris fucking Paul that is the best lineup in the NBA. That is crazy pants.
It's insane. I mean, and that's just a testament, again, to Harden, who is, if not the best, one of the 3 or 4 best offensive players in the league. It's just totally figured out the pick and roll game. He's just a savant there. Isolation play, of course. I've just been kind of, honestly, like Eric Gordon only shooting 32% from 3. His burst and getting to the lane, is just physicality. He just looks athletically totally different to me. Paul looked like that, changing directions. I watched the Spurs game. Did both these guys go to Germany? Like, what the hell is going on? Like, it's incredible.
Well, like with Eric Gordon, the thing is, like, he was that athletic. Whenever people were real excited about him, like when he played for the Clippers early in his career and when he played at Indiana, like, you know, hashtag people forget that. But like, he was a very clear top 5 recruit in the country when he went to Indiana. Like, some people thought he was the best recruit in the country that year, even like compared to Derrick Rose, which is wild. So, like, Eric Gordon has been athletic, but like the injuries over the course of the last 4 or 5 years have taken a toll. And then apathy has taken a toll in some places. Like, for instance, when he was in New Orleans, I don't think he really wanted to be there. But now that he's in a great situation, he's healthier now. He looks awesome. He looks unbelievable. Like you mentioned, just the burst to get into the lane and the ability to draw fouls like that he had in a way that he hasn't recently. He's throwing down monster dunks. Eric Gordon has kind of revamped the way that they can play small in a way, because they can, you know, they probably aren't going to play him and James Harden and Chris Paul together a ton of times, but theoretically, all 3 of those guys are good enough shooters and all 3 of those guys are good enough ball handlers that they could put those guys on the floor together, play Trevor Ariza, play PJ Tucker with them, and just play a super fun brand of basketball.
And what it allows that, too, is because they're so strong. Like, Gordon's strength has always been really underrated, in my opinion. James Harden, of course, has that frame, and nobody defends bigger than their size like Chris Paul. So that's how you can survive those lineups. Some matchups against like the Warriors when Durant's at the 3, that's going to be a tougher sell. But against a lot of the league, these guys are strong enough to kind of switch. Clint Capela is another guy we have to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
Kind of a breakout player, pogo stick type of lob threat for Harden. He gives them such a different dynamic, but he also can pass now out of short rolls, and he has some non-dunk touch. I think he's been, I mean, he's shown that proclivity to a level I didn't expect him to get at. I have a question for you. What do you think he gets paid this summer?
I've been trying to figure that out. Like, I think that Ricky O'Donnell over at SB Nation on Twitter one night asked me, would I rather have Steven Adams or Clint Capela? I would rather have Adams. I think Steven Adams is a better basketball player. I think he's way better defender. And I think that he is hindered in a lot of ways by what that scheme asks him to do. He posts up a ton of the time. I think he would be an awesome, he's already a good screen and roll basketball player, but can you imagine him in like a spread pick and roll offense? He's so good passing off those short rolls. He's just a more functional player to me than Clint Capela. But like, Steven Adams got paid a crazy amount of money to where dumb NBA people think he's overpaid now when they're wrong. Like, he's very clearly not. But like, he's going to get like $25 million a year. Clint Capela, I don't know the way the market is going to work this summer necessarily, but like, he's a $20 million a year player easy, I think.
I'm with you on both accounts. I think that Adams is a better player. He's just super physical, and he can anchor a defense better with that kind of strength and rebounding and all that. Capela he has good feet on the perimeter. I don't think he's going to anchor your defense, but he's a valuable player. I probably, considering market dynamics, I think he gets that Nerlens 4-year, $70 million offer. I think maybe not. I mean, it's hard to predict just because restricted free agency as a big man is the toughest sell, you know, in free agency overall. It's just really tough to project those kind of guys. Like, what does Julius Randle get? We've talked about that in the past. I think Capela, I mean, maybe they just save face. The Rockets are like, we'll just give you the Nerlens offer, 4-year, 70. He probably should take that, honestly, in this market. And I think that would be a really fair price.
Oh, wow. To me, that's low. Like, if I'm his agent, there's no way I'm getting to August and accepting that. Because
it's tough, though.
But here's the thing, though. So, like, worst case scenario, he just takes the qualifying offer, right? And, worst case scenario is he takes the qualifying offer and gets hurt. But, like, say he takes the qualifying offer, he can be an unrestricted free agent in 2019 where the big man market is going to be, like, smaller. It's not going to be quite as vast as having DeMarcus Cousins. And, every single big man in the NBA, it seemingly, is going to be a free agent this summer, where I think that could actually work in his favor a little bit. Like, I think they actually kind of have to come correct in at least a solid manner here. Like, I'd be surprised if he got under $20 million a year.
It's interesting. I mean, I definitely get your thought process, but we thought a lot of similar things about Nerlens as well, and look at how that situation turned out. Like, he'd be lucky to get, $10 million next offseason, honestly, just the way.
Well, the thing is with Nerlens, though, is like, so Nerlens has the issues in terms of personal life that,
Sure.
I know that Sixers fans don't love to hear that stuff, but like, that stuff is out there. He's also nowhere near as accomplished as what Capela is going to be if he comes off the season. Like, Clint Capela will have put together a much better resume than what Nerlens ever did. And I know that like advanced stats people love to say Nerlens has been so incredible in, steal rate and block rate. And every time he's been on the floor on a permanent basis has been great. I don't disagree with any of that. And I think that it's a fair argument to make. But the problem is that whenever you look at him in comparison to Capela, Capela has proven himself as like a top 15 center in the NBA. Nerlens Noel right now can't get off the bench in Dallas for very real reasons. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I agree with all that. I'm just saying that, like, if you're crafting a worst case scenario, you get offered like 470, you reject that, you play for the qualifying offer. We don't know exactly what could happen. I mean, I agree that it's probably not a Nerlens case, but you have to consider risk in the analysis process. I think Capela's an average NBA, a little bit above average NBA center for the modern game. I mean, he might be able to become more than that. I'm not sure. He's still young at 23, right. But it's just tough in this market. Do you really want to pass up average starter money if you're a starting caliber 5? I don't know. It's a tough choice, and that's why I think the negotiation is going to be so fascinating to see kind of what both sides arrive at. Anything between like 470, 480, I think that's a fair number. I'd be kind of surprised if he got over $20 million a year, honestly, just given market dynamics.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so the free agents this summer in the big man market, DeMarcus Cousins is unrestricted. DeAndre Jordan is going to be unrestricted. Derek Favors is going to be unrestricted. Yusuf Nurkic is going to be restricted. Nerlens will be unrestricted if people are still interested in Nerlens. I think he'll have some interest, but he's not going to be playing on the same marketplace as a Clint Capela is. Brook Lopez is going to be an unrestricted free agent. I believe Dwight Howard can Dwight Howard be an unrestricted free agent this year?
Oh, I think he can. I think he has a player option. I want to say, don't quote me on that. I doubt he opts out though.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll opt out either. I would venture he probably won't, but just in case, it's worth throwing his name out there.
For sure.
Also, I believe Nikola Jokic has an opt out as well, or he has a non-guarantee on his 4th year of his contract. So Denver will likely decline that, make him a restricted free agent and pay him. So they're not going to be on the marketplace either. It's not, I don't know that he actually affects the marketplace just because they're going to match whatever. It's not a problem with Nikola Jokic. And to be honest, I doubt he ever really even entertains other offers, but that's another center on the market,
Yeah, it's going to be tough sledding for the restricted free agent market. Like you said, there's a couple unrestricted guys that are better players than Capela. So it's going to be an interesting test case. I think it's one of those progression steps for free agency that we can kind of gauge what bigs will get in the future, kind of, even though more teams will have cap space, not this offseason, but the next season moving forward. So that's just something to consider. One quick note about the Rockets. Ryan Anderson's been pretty good for them this year. I think he's trying more on D. And again, he adds to that lineups being multiple and being able to play the 5 in some stretches, which makes them basically unguardable because of his gravity as a shooter. He can shoot from 4 or 5 feet behind the line at times. And that just added spacing just makes them ridiculous in the pick and roll.
Oh, yeah. You can throw him or if 5s have to guard him outside the paint, it's insane. There's no way that they can do that and tangibly also protect the rim. They've also been running these kind of weird lineups too occasionally with Trevor Ariza and PJ Tucker as the 2 big men in the lineup. Those are very interesting to me too. There have also been a couple cases where Luke Mbah-a-Moute has been really good for them this year, as well as just another versatile piece that they can play with. Any sort of on-off lineup number with him has been really, really strong.
He was a great signing. I mean, he's been fantastic for them. One of the best signings all offseason when you consider value. Both him and Tucker can hit corner threes. I think we're going to see a lot of that 4-5 pairing against the Warriors in the playoffs if it comes to that. We're going to see them go a little smaller and be able to just super switch everything. They have the personnel to do that more than in Oklahoma City. They have the smaller dynamic with the switchability, but these players can also make corner threes at a reasonable rate. So I think they do match up well with basically every team in the league just because they have such diverse personnel. So
yeah, that was going to be my next question for you. Now that we've seen a decent amount of them with Chris Paul, and now that we've seen guys like PJ Tucker and Luke Mbah-a-Moute come together within this rotation, and now that we see what Eric Gordon is this year, and we've seen his new normal, what is this team's ceiling? Do we think they can beat the Warriors?
I think they have a chance. I mean, they're not the favorites to me, of course, but I think they're the team that looks most capable of doing so just because, like we talked about, they have the lineup versatility, they have the switchability with the ability to play small and counter some of the Golden State's lineups, but they also have two of the best on-ball decision makers in the league right now. You have to have that kind of mental equity. That's what makes LeBron so great against the Warriors on top of a lot of other reasons, but just you have to have guys that make great decisions because the margin for error is so low. If you screw up, the Warriors make you pay basically every single time. I know that Chris Paul has this whole narrative about choking in the playoffs, but that's one of the smartest dudes we've seen play basketball at the lead guard position. And you pair him with Harden, I just think that's what gives them the edge is the superstar power and the high intelligence.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that they are the team most equipped to beat the Warriors right now. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Like, I think that they're more well-equipped than Cleveland. I think they're more well-equipped than Oklahoma City, even though Oklahoma City's struggling right now, obviously. Like, I still think they're going to be in the conversation. I just look at the ways this lineup can match up with the Warriors and say, like, okay, if the Warriors want to run out the death lineup, the Rockets can play Harden, Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, and Luka Mbamute, and be okay. Or they could play Clint Capela in that lineup and try and stop them with a rim protector defensively that's also relatively mobile on the perimeter. There are a lot of different lineup combinations here that they can run out that are interesting to me. I'm going to be very intrigued to see how much Mike D'Antoni kind of shows his hand throughout the year. How much does he try and get these small lineups experience playing together versus how much does he try and hide what they're going to do schematically in a way, or how much does he try and limit the minutes of his stars so that they're fresh going into the playoffs? There are a lot of really tough dynamics for him to kind of manage right now as a team that, I mean, they were certainly incredibly successful last year, but they did add, two very important we could even make a case for Luka Mbamute as well as a third very important piece that is very different from what they had last year. How much do they try and figure things out together and show some of their hand versus hide some of their things and kind of, force Golden State into a situation where they might not have a great scout on the way that these things are going to operate.
And I think that Chris Paul deserves a lot of credit. I mean, there was all these fit issues, like the national media, how are these guys going to play together and all that.
Incredible bullshit.
From the skill standpoint, I totally agree with you. I mean, both those guys can shoot. And then Chris Paul just being willing to play at a higher tempo, not just, pound the ball and run floppy actions for Redick. He deserves some credit in being able to fit stylistically. Kind of probably the 1B to Harden's 1A offensively. The skill thing I never really understood that argument, honestly. They're both just so freaking all-around skilled. As shooters, playmakers, everything. It's just Paul deserves credit for kind of giving Harden some leeway, and that was the idea behind the entire experiment, of course, is joining forces and actually having enough, primary initiator equity to, challenge the Warriors.
Well, the problem with, the whole Chris Paul conversation is that his most underrated skill is the fact that he's an unbelievable three-point shooter now. He is legitimately one of the best shooters in the NBA now. I don't really even know that there's an argument. Over the last 2 years, he's shot 5.5 threes a game and is making them at a 42% clip. I mean, are we joking with that? You add that to Chris Paul's skill set already as a domineering distributor who can take over games by himself. You throw in the fact that he's one of the best shooters in the NBA and can play off ball and catch and shoot. Unbelievable. He's just a total freak in terms of his abilities and in how great he is at getting better and improving his game. And you throw in Eric Gordon as well. Eric Gordon would start on 17 teams in the NBA. It's insane to me that they're this good.
And Gordon's shot is probably going to regress positively too. 32% from three. I think he's better than that with the quality of shots he gets as well. So I think you have to add that into this calculus that he's probably going to shoot better too. Just makes them even more dynamic. Yeah,
I mean, the last kind of thing I want to ask you about here is how much do you believe in the defense? They are, as you mentioned, I believe 7th in the NBA in defensive rating right now, right around the 103 number, if I remember correctly, in terms of defensive rating. Do you believe that they are this actually good in terms of what they can do defensively in a 7-game series?
I think just with the lineup versatility, again, they can play awesome defensive lineups on the court. Chris Paul's defense it shouldn't be underrated, but it's freaking awesome. He's so good on that side of the ball. And, if you add PJ Tucker, Mote, those guys are definitely above average defensive players. I'd say probably quasi-elite defensive players in terms of awareness and just switchability. They're going to be matchups, of course, where Ryan Anderson gets played off the floor. I think they do have some weaknesses, but I think they're a top 10 defense in a series. I think that they are that proficient, and they can play the right lamps to extract that.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with you. Let's go on ahead and move on. But before we do that, let's go on ahead and pay the bills here on the Game Theory podcast. First sponsor is going to be DraftKings. Listen up, Hoops fans. Basketball season is back, and that means your favorite hardwood heroes have returned to action. It's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test to win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. Choose from public contests with huge cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against your friends. They've even got beginner or casual contests where you will play against people of a similar skill level. The best part is that you get to draft a new team every single day, and drafting a team is the best part of fantasy sports. The only thing better is winning cash to do it. There are huge cash prizes and bragging rights awaiting every single night only at DraftKings.com. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com to play for free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes tonight. Don't wait. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup, and you can seriously cash in tonight. That's code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Second sponsor today is MyBookie. Holiday cash, you need it, and I know where you can get it. MyBookie is the place to score serious cash on your sports predictions. Believe it or not, the holidays are just around the corner. We are within, a week of Christmas Day now. And while that means plenty of parties, gifts, and spending, it also means there's a lot of football, basketball, and hockey games you can score big on every single day. Man up and play like the pros on game day. You can play the money line, side, or total. MyBookie is your hookup for all your betting needs and offers super fast payouts when you win. Where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on. And if you want to make money betting the games, you got to go to mybookie.ag. They're the only site that I would recommend. I trust them, but you don't have to take my word for it. Check them out for yourselves. They have odds on every single matchup and a mobile betting site that makes wagering on your smartphone a breeze. Join now and MyBookie will match your deposit up to a 50% bonus. Use the code GameTheory, that's GAMETHEORY. Visit mybookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid. Cole, the thing that we were struck by watching college basketball this week was just how incredibly good Trae Young is. I'm just going to give you the floor. Tell me how awesome Trae Young is and how ridiculous his performance was against Wichita State.
Well, I'm actually going to turn this around as a question to you because you've watched college basketball for longer than I am. But how would you grade the first 30 minutes of that Wichita game from him?
Oh, man.
As far as historically for freshman guards, I know he kind of ran out of gas down the stretch a little bit because he was doing absolutely everything for Oklahoma. But how would you grade that kind of showcase of skill level?
I mean, it's like the shooting was incredible. Don't get me wrong. He had 28 points in those first 30 minutes. And I think he did drop 9 of his 10 assists in those first 30 minutes. He was unbelievable during that time frame. And he did it against the Wichita State team that gets after you defensively. Zach Brown is genuinely one of the best perimeter defenders in college basketball. Landry Shamet, I think probably gets a little bit overrated as a defender because I think he gets easier matchups than Brown, but he's a really, really, really good defender regardless of that. I just watch what Trae Young does and I'm struck every time. I'm running out of reasons for him to not be a top 5 pick. I'm just being frank. It's hard for me to look at what he does on a night in, night out basis. Look at what his specific skills are in terms of being able to get separation at any time, being able to warp the floor by being able to shoot from 30 feet away, being able to make unbelievable passes and unbelievable reads to his teammates and get them wide open looks. It's hard to overstate how good he is right now.
Yeah, and the thing about it is it's not coming easily. It's not like he's getting points within the offense. He is the damn offense. All these shots are he has to create separation by himself. I mean, he played against a lot of hard hedges against Wichita State. Any kind of glimpse that he had of space, Like when the hedge defender started to recover to his man, he was just pulling up for three. That's curtains. Playing with pace and craft, locating the roll man with precision passes, the corner three shooters with both passes left and right hand variety. It was just the precision timing, the craft with both hands passing, just very unique vision as a drive and kick player. I don't think that gets enough credit. It's just he can keep his head up and really survey the entire court in those situations. At one point in this game, when he split that pick and roll, the floater finish, I was like standing up. That's the level that we are at with this game. I've just never, like, in my time viewing college basketball, I've never seen a guard play like that for the 30 minutes offensively. It was just ridiculous.
He got separation whenever he wanted against elite defenders. Like anything that he wanted to do, he was able to do it. He showed off the floaters. He showed off the ability to finish through traffic and through contact at the rim. He showed off the incredible range. The passing, like you said, with both hands. I think that was a great point. His passing ability with both his right and left hands as a one-handed passer is on point. Like every single time, it's right where it needs to be. He'll throw these like little underhanded passes that end up directly in the shooter's shooting pocket, which makes it a lot easier for them to bring up a shot and, actually get a quicker look. I do think that there's something to be said for the fact that Oklahoma runs a 5-out scheme. They play Brady Manick at the, essentially the 5. I mean, sometimes they play Kadeem Latin at the 5, and sometimes they'll play Jamoni McNeese at the 5. But like Brady Manick is the guy running, I guess it's 1-4 pick and rolls and 1-4 pick and pops, and he warps the floor in a pretty significant way. Christian James, Cameron McGusty is a guy that teams still respect out there at the very least. Like, there's something to be said for the way that their offense operates and the way that, it's a very point guard friendly scheme. But at the end of the day, man, it just doesn't matter. Like, he's still the guy who is driving every single thing. There is not another, like, super above average offensive player on this roster. It's all role players next to him, and he is just dominating.
Yeah, the part that sticks out, again, it was the separation ability against his caliber of defense. These kinds of athletes, like he was shaking Brown with hesitation moves in isolation. He had some wicked in and out dribbles when he actually got space to operate. Looked like he turned the corner pretty consistently. And he also showed proclivity to draw fouls. Like he seeks contact, has a little bit of that ball show move. It's just overall, the total package there offensively is there if you can get over the size concerns, which I don't think are glaring. It's not like this guy's Tyler Ulis on that end. The Jimmer comps are pretty damning. I think they're kind of ridiculous. I mean, what was Jimmer's biggest issue is his inability to separate with the ball, Right. And Trae's at least shown the ability to do that against, high-level college athletes. Does it translate in a dynamic way? I'm not sure yet, but when you just go over his production, his usage rate being over 30, his true shooting percentage before this game, I don't know what it is after, was 65. So that puts him in like very, very rare category as far as start to the season. We're talking about guys like, Stephen Curry, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, really generational type shooters. And I think that's what he potentially could be. What we didn't see a lot of this game was off the catch shooting. Every time that guy gets an open look off the catch, it looks like it's going in. I don't care if it's from 30 feet. Like, it's automatic. He can run off screens. He can sprint and kind of quickly transition, set his feet off the move, hit those off-screen shots. We just haven't seen a lot of that because they need him to handle the ball so much. And I think that's in his game. And he's not going to have to be this high usage of a player in the NBA. He can play off ball. He can relinquish, some of these hard shots he's getting right now for higher efficiency shots. That's going to make him even more efficient.
Yeah, no, I'm going to give you some numbers based off of the scouting that you just said that kind of backs that up, right? So he's drawing 7.7 fouls per game. That's 26th nationally. That's an incredible number for a player his size, obviously, and it speaks to the way that he gets separation and seeks out contact. In terms of true shooting percentage, he's to 63.5% true shooting percentage right now. That's great. His percentage of possessions taken is third nationally. To do that on a 63.5 true shooting percentage is the most bonkers thing that I can really imagine, to be honest. Assist percentage, 48.4 compared to only a 15.6 turnover rate. Really, really strong numbers. Overall, he's just incredible to me. Like, there's nothing about his game that I don't like. And you mentioned the comp to Jimmer. Jimmer couldn't get separation because he didn't have like the craft that Trae does and doesn't have the first step that Trae does. Trae's first step, I think, is a little bit underrated at this stage just because of the craft that he has in terms of his handle. But also, Jimmer had a much longer release on his jumper. than what Trae has. Like, Trae is a very quick release shooter. He's a quick draw. Jimmer had like that very like high jump on his jump shot. He'd bring the ball back like a little bit to his head and then shoot. Like, it was, defenders could close out on him much, much easier than they're going to be able to close out on Trae Young. The final question here with Trae is, are you where I'm at? Like, I'm trying to find reasons to not have him at like number 5 on my board whenever the next iteration of it comes out. Like, I'm looking at him and thinking, okay, I think I trust him in his game a little bit more than Mohamed Bamba. But then you look at the fact, okay, he's played with Michael Porter his whole life, and Michael Porter has been just kind of better than he was like on the same AAU team, you know? So like, how do you kind of rectify those things? You know what I mean? Like, how do you kind of work that with each other?
Yeah, I mean, I had him about 9 or 10 coming into this game. I was pretty high on him in the top 10. I thought that I would solidify that as much. I think he's probably going to be, it's going to take a lot for him to drop out of that, just because I think he's the second most skilled guy, maybe even the most skilled guy. It's between him and Luka in that capacity. And obviously Luka has the frame and the size that Trae doesn't have. It's tough. I mean, I look at this draft, and you can make a case for him, 4 or 5. I would still take Porter over him if the medical checks out, like you noted. I just think the value of a modern kind of wing combo forward who can really score, that might exceed, like as far as certainty, might exceed Trae's a little bit perhaps more uncertain projection just because of the size. But a lot of the concerns with Trae we had with Stephen Curry. I'm not making that comp because to reach that level of like ridiculous historical outlier is just a bad bet. But there are definitive arguments for him in the top 5, and I think I might actually get there in time. You look at a guy like Jaren Jackson, who I love. Does he have the same kind of upside as Trae Young? Because Trae Young has that initiator upside and that equity. Does he have that same ability? Probably not. So it's getting harder and harder, man. I'm with you. Yeah.
Like, Trae Young is definitely a top 7 player in this class for me right now. It's like I said, it's good. Like, I haven't come together and like put all of my thoughts together on paper yet for when I have to do this update. But like, it's hard for me to see a circumstance where I don't at least have him top 7 and probably more like 5, maybe even 4. He's really good. He's really, really good. Let's talk about the other side there. Landry Shamet, this was a big matchup coming in for him. He goes for 17 points. He has 5 assists, but he turns it over 5 times. He only went 1 of 6 from 3. That's an aberrant, kind of performance from him. He's an elite level shooter. What were your impressions of Landry Shamet in that like kind of tough matchup game that he had against Trae Young?
I was really impressed. This is kind of the first in-depth viewing I've had of him, and I came away pretty blown away. He looked like a definite first-round pick to me, which I don't think a lot of people might have, but like late 20s, I really like this guy a lot. I know it's not a precise comparison, but the first time I watched him, he kind of reminded me of a smaller Sean Livingston who can shoot. Just kind of that size pull-up combination, gets good elevation, plays with pace and poise, easily handles pressure, the long strides to the basket. He can finish with some. I don't know how long he is, but I think he's big and long enough to finish around the rim a little bit. Great timing in pick and roll, can pass with either hand as well, dribble moves to set up, turn the corner and hit guys in the corner. Can play off ball as well. I thought that he set pretty quickly off the catch. He had this one pin down curl play where I think he got a floater out of it on some action, and then he relocates off the ball. So he relocates to better passing angles. So I was just really impressed. He seemed like a high IQ player with good size, good feel, and high skill level. And that player, fits well in the modern game.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at, especially whenever you consider the fact that he's 6'4". He plays tough defense. He's a good point of attack defender. He can switch a little bit defensively because of that size. I really like the package of skills. I think I would probably have him 20s to 30s, somewhere in that range right now. He's really, really good. He's just so skilled, and he's a good passer. The biggest skill, though, like you said, is poise and basketball IQ. He just makes the right decisions on the floor, even though he didn't really show that against Oklahoma with the turnovers. That's not something you have to worry about with him typically, though. They were trying to come back late in that game. They were trying to, take some risks in that like second half there. I wouldn't be super worried about what we've seen there.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch more of him. I keep forgetting the guy's name. What's the combo forward on their team?
Marcus McDuffie?
Yes, I keep waiting for him to come back to watch Shamet more, so when he does, I'll end up watching a lot more games and feel more comfortable with that projection. But from the first glimpse viewing, I was really impressed.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a decent chance they're both leaving at the end of this year just because they're that good. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with them. Who else did I have on this little list here I sent you? We've got, well, let's talk about the Mississippi State Cincinnati game because I felt that was an interesting, like, kind of sleeper game because you look at guys like Jacob Evans, Gary Clark, Eric Holman, Lamar Peters is a guy that I've talked about online a little bit. Probably haven't talked about him enough on this podcast, really. There are guys that people in the NBA are actually relatively big fans of in places in Mississippi State and Cincinnati that aren't necessarily high level basketball hotbeds for NBA draft prospects. So when you watched this game, what was your kind of resounding impression on both sides?
I've seen a lot of Cincinnati just because I enjoy watching Jacob Evans offensively predominantly and then Gary Clark defensively. So those guys have good familiarity with. Evans has that kind of smooth one-motion shot. Feel like it's going in every time he gets a good look. Yep. Plays well off the ball. I think his skill level and IQ as a passer is actually pretty underrated. He doesn't have a great first step at all, and he doesn't have the burst. But he's not just a 3-and-D guy who can't dribble. Like, he knows how to play. He can run an offense in a specific setting. Defensively, he plays hard, finishes plays with blocks. I'm a little concerned about how quick he is laterally on an island. Yeah. It wasn't in this game, but Bluiett in that Xavier game gave him some struggles laterally. I'm not sure if he projects as any kind of lockdown defender at all, but more so just kind of a guy who's a fringe 3-and-D guy with a better handle and better passing than you think that can really shoot the ball. Gary Clark's reactionary anticipation and awareness off ball and D is so fun to watch. He is so quick to the ball and the glass on both ends. He's not the best, most dynamic athlete, but he has those kind of instincts that can compensate. High motor, finishes plays on the perimeter, basically always challenges shots with great range. Quick reactions on closeouts. He's tough and physical. We saw that against Holman a few times inside. Just beat into the ball. Was just more physical. I think that the IQ and defense and passing is there. Good feet in space on defense as well. He just needs to shoot threes. I mean, that's what it comes down to. He knocked down one in this game. Pick and pop. It looked pretty reasonable. He gets some Draymond Green comparisons. I don't see him as that kind of player, honestly, as a ball handler. But I do think he deserves some attention in the second round. What do you think about him? Yeah, no, he's a guy that I've long been a big fan of. I've been talking about him since he was a sophomore. I love that dude, but I loved him more as a college basketball player for the first couple years. This year, it all comes down to the shot for me. If he can shoot it, I think he's an NBA player in this, condensed NBA where you're looking for guys who can defend on the perimeter and who can, potentially block some weak side shots and who can, guard multiple varieties of player. He can guard big and he can guard wings pretty easily, I think, in the NBA. It just all depends on the shot. He's not good enough offensively right now without the jump shot to play in the NBA. And if he can shoot it at a 38% clip from three, I think he's an NBA player. If he can't, he's not. It's just kind of that simple, right? Yeah, I totally agree. What do you think about Cumberland? He's kind of vexing to me.
He's fine, I guess. The jump shot, I don't like the jump shot mechanics, first and foremost. And then, he's just like a bully, kind of. At his size. He's a wing that's a bully. I don't know how that works in the NBA.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that he gets a lot of press by some of draft Twitter corners, and that's the one guy I don't really. He does more lower guys. Guys are high on his analytics. I think stuff like that, but he has a great frame, but he's just super inflexible as a finisher. Yeah. I mean, he's really well built. I'm with you. That 2-motion kind of slingshot release does not pass the eye test. I know he's a relatively effective shooter, I think. But it just doesn't look like
41% from 2-point range this year. What are we talking about?
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not blaming you. We're on the same page with him. I'm saying, who is talking about him?
Yeah, the finishing it definitely jumps off negatively. He just can't really adjust at all. He doesn't have a dynamic explosiveness element to him. He looks like he's pretty high IQ for the most part on both ends, but he does take some really poor contested twos that I noticed. But another high effort guy. That's a lot of the Cincinnati system, though. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Jacob Evans too. I mean, we talked about you talked about him at the top there. I had him as a first round pick coming into the year. I think I was probably a little bit high, to be honest. I'd probably have him more in the 30s to 40s range right now, but I do think that he is their best NBA prospect and is a very real NBA prospect.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can echo that 100%. We're agreeing on way too much today, but I had him probably mid-20s coming in. Defensively, I'm a little bit more worried than I was just getting a closer look at him. What do you think about Holman on Mississippi State?
Yeah, I really actually like him quite a bit. He was a guy that had gotten a little bit of sneaky press from NBA people in general, as a guy that is athletic. He's 6'10". He has potential to shoot it a little bit. Not quite there yet, but maybe one day he will get there. He's also very, very young for his age. He's only, I think, like 20 years old right now. So even though he's a junior, he is like very, very young for what he is. He's a really good offensive rebounder, has some length, it looks like, can block some weak side shots. But the big thing is, like, right now he's in the midst of like this incredible shooting run, basically, where he's shooting 70% from 2-point range and 60% from 3-point range. I think a lot of it depends on where he settles in as a jump shooter. The jump shot looks good for a kid his size. He shot 25% last year. He shot 15% as a freshman. I don't really know entirely how good of a jump shooter he is yet, but that's the key skill.
Absolutely. And I think it looks, like you noted, it looks good on film, like the high and quick release, pretty fluid. He looks good catching off the hop. So that's something to look for. Pretty explosive. I wouldn't say he's like dynamically explosive, but he has some pop off 2 feet, especially. He had that load off dunk in the dunker position against Cincinnati. Seems like a lob threat off 2 feet. He had a couple flash plays, fluidity-wise, like a quick spin baseline that looked really well. I just don't know about him defensively as far as awareness. He looks kind of like all length to me with some bounce, maybe as a weak side guy. He was a pretty low-effort defender in that game, I thought. Didn't have any kind of urgency to close out on guys. I'm not sure how good his IQ. He's definitely someone I want to see more of, though.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, we just want to see more of him. Like, it's not even like we're saying he's definitely this NBA prospect. Like, he's just interesting, though, I think, and worth paying attention to. A guy that I've gotten shit for not having as high as some other people do is Lamar Peters. I'm not a huge fan of his game whatsoever. He currently posts so let's start with this. So the Lamar Peters hype started this summer. It started a little bit later last year, actually, and he got invited to Adidas Nations this summer because of it. And he balled out at Adidas Nations. He was, incredible. You talk to NBA scouts there. There were quite a few who were really, really high on him. Sure, I think that's great. He played really, really well at the camp, and that's awesome. But, coming into the year, he was still a guy that scored 11 points per game last year, had a turnover rate of like 20%, wasn't like an elite level passer, and had a 53% true shooting percentage. Like, we needed to see more from him, full stop. This year, he is posting that same 20% turnover rate. His assist rate has gone down, and his true shooting percentage is 39.9 right now.
Yeesh.
I don't really get it with him. I mean, maybe that's just me. I mean, like, I understood the idea of him because people thought he could be a really good passer and that he was a good shooter. I don't like, and that he could get separation, but I don't really like, I've never really gotten it, I guess, totally. Like that was, I think that he's kind of still living off of a really strong camp.
Yeah, and the Cincinnati game was the first I've seen of him in depth again, and it was probably one of his worst games he's played as far as scoring efficiency, of course, like not making a shot. He was pretty brutal in that game. I thought his mechanics were okay, gets good alignment with some elevation, but it comes out a little flat. I didn't see the separation, to be honest. I thought there was pretty so-so burst. He couldn't take Evans off the dribble at times, and he even got isolated against Cumberland in space and couldn't take advantage of that. So I get kind of the allure. He looks pretty quick. That he had a couple initial quick through the legs moves, but he didn't really get any separation off of them. He just looked kind of short area quickness was okay. And the defense, actually, I liked more than the offense. He was quick laterally in that game, good speed, tracking around screens. It looked like he played with active hands, especially denying like dribble handoffs. But I didn't get the allure as far as in the NBA, you want your backup point guards, which is what he's going to be more dynamic scoring threats or bring some kind of like ridiculous shooting ability. I didn't see either one from him really.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Just basically all across the board there. You mentioned an interesting name while talking about Jacob Evans. You mentioned Trevon Bluiett. For people who haven't been paying as much attention to Xavier this year, Trevon Bluiett has taken another leap in his game. He is currently the best statistical jump shooter in all of college basketball so far this year. You can, take a look at the numbers here, and they are just outrageous. His effective field goal percentage as a jump shooter right now, there have been about 300 players to take at least 60 jump shots. He's first in that number, and his effective field goal percentage is 78.2% on jump shots. Like, it's unbelievable to me the way he is playing. He's not going to keep that up the whole year, but this is a dude that's 6'6" and just knows how to score, and he can shoot like that. Like, he's a guy that like doesn't show up on any boards other than really mine, and I have him like in the top 60 right now, like pretty easily. Like, I get the athletic concerns, but like, he's just really good.
He looks like a second-round pick to me. Just the shot diversity, the quick release. Like, he really popped in that game against Cincinnati that I saw him against Evans. He was actually winning a lot of that matchup, which was really impressive to me, getting by Evans. He has more off the bounce game. I'm not sure if he's a dynamic athlete there, but he can handle and put the ball on the floor some. What you want to see from him is that a little bit, yeah. I don't think that's probably not going to translate. What you're looking for with him is obviously the shooting and the shot diversity. Can he make shots off screens? He's going to be kind of that kind of player, but I did think he deserves to be mentioned in top 60.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm at on him. Like, I think he's just an interesting player more than anything. Did you by chance? Oh, geez, Penny's a very angry dog right now. Cole, can you talk for a minute while I try and get my dog to shut up? What do you mentioned the next topic here?
Yeah, let's do Kevin Knox. I think that was one of the other guys on the list here. I think it can be an advantage scorer in the NBA who attacks closeouts, can operate as a shooter off movement a little bit and post up mismatches. That game over the weekend, I think he has really good touch. Honestly, that's the thing that pops with him most of all. He has good touch around the basket. I think there are athletic concerns with Knox. Honestly, I don't think he's that fast. His burst isn't great. I'm not sure he's ever going to be some kind of mid-post isolation scorer. But what we did see in this game was, against Virginia Tech, was the post-up ability. Like, he elevated right over the top of Nikhil a couple times, drew some fouls, had some nice footwork in those situations. I think he's going to be a valuable kind of off-ball scoring type. I mean, if he can get to that shot, we talked about a shot in the past and how we're both high on it long term. I think there's enough there to go off of. His mechanics are great. Oh, no, I wouldn't say great. They're pretty good. He can shoot with a high release. His size gives him an advantage there. We'll see. I just don't see the same kind of high ceiling as a lot of other people do. I think he's still probably a lottery pick just because it's such a clear projection with his frame, shooting ability. He's not great defensively, but he's more agile than he probably gets credit for. He struggled a lot with closeouts against Virginia Tech, but I thought he showed well for himself in this game, as opposed to someone like Nikhil, who I was high on, who didn't really do anything in this game at all.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed with Nikhil Alexander-Walker, and have been throughout the course of the year. Like, his numbers look really good, but I don't want to say they're fake numbers, but like Nikhil Alexander-Walker this year, they've been pulling him pretty regularly in crunch time just because they can't really trust him to defend right now. And that's a little bit scary. Like, I think he might be more of a 2-year player than what I thought going into the year. So Kevin Knox right now, 55% true shooting percentage, only 33% from three, despite the fact that, as Cole said, we do both really like the mechanics on the jump shot. In terms of his athleticism, he's a very good open floor athlete at 6'9". He's just I think he's generally a really good athlete at 6'9" for his 225 pounds or whatever he is. His hips look a little bit stiff to me, though. Do you think you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Like, he just looks a little bit uptight, like upright, and isn't necessarily, like, he doesn't apply his athleticism in the way that you would hope that a guy like Kevin Knox would. In general, I think that he's still a top 10 pick for sure to me, like right now. Like, my problem is that I can't find enough guys to put over him. You know, like I can't find the guy that I would for sure rather have than him. Like, I would rather have him than Robert Williams. I would for sure still rather have, I'd probably rather have him than Bruce Brown. I would probably rather have him than Lonnie Walker and Hamidou Diallo, for instance, on his own team. And speaking of Diallo, you watched that game. What were your impressions of Diallo? Because he's actually shooting the ball reasonably well from three right now. Like, he's at like 39% from three. But I don't know that the athleticism has really played up in the half court in a way that I hoped it would this year.
Yeah, it's just tough because it's hard for him to apply his athletic functionally because he just doesn't have the handle or the coordination on ball to do that unless it's like an open court setting where he's just running. It's like more of a run and jump variety. The takeaway for me was the same as you. Is he's shooting the ball better than I expected him to. He's definitely put in work over the last 2 years. Like, I saw him shoot 2 years ago. It did not look like, I'm not saying it's a great fluid looking shot, but it's fluid enough. It's more fluid than I expected. I feel comfortable taking him in the 20s now. I think when you combine his athleticism and like a run and jump kind of defensive quickness, point of attack potentially way with his shooting capabilities and his high character, he's known as like a hard worker off the court. From everybody I've talked to in the past, like at the Hoop Summit, everybody's pretty much fond of this guy. I don't know if that's the right reporting or whatnot, but I'm high enough on him overall with that package to profile him, project him as a late first-round pick. I just think, again, maybe the functional athleticism becoming any kind of an on-ball, non-closeout attacking threat might be asking a bit too much of him.
Yeah, I think that's probably all right. I don't really know that I have anything else to say about that right now. I would still I still have him as a top 20 guy in this class, to be honest, just because I think the potential is there for him to kind of figure out some of these issues. He's never going to be like, I think, a star, but I think that he can bring together enough of a package that he's going to be a good role player at a position of premium value.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I have him like early 20s, so like 22 or 23, so right around the same range. I'm a little bit more skeptical, but he's shown me enough that I'm not like somebody who has him in the second round, like way down in the second round, as like pure like hypothetical or conceptual athletic upside play. I think he's shown a little bit more than that. Yeah,
no, I agree with you there. We have another name here. Let me find it. Oh, I know exactly what I want to talk to you about. Are you someone who believes in Jalen Brunson in the same way that I believe in Jalen Brunson?
I am. I mean, that game against Temple was ridiculous, but even before that, when I was watching him, I tweeted, I think 3 weeks ago, that this guy has some TJ McConnell equity as far as spatial awareness on the court. There are definitely differences, but he knows where everybody is on the court. I think you noted via text that he's the highest IQ player in college basketball. That definitely backs it up for me. Like, that's kind of the observation that I made. But he can really shoot, too. Like, he's got a pretty good pull-up game. Again, we saw that against Temple, where he was just knocking down these pull-up jumpers. And if he can shoot well enough and he knows where everybody is on the court, we've seen guys like that, even like Dellavedova types, who just have that spatial awareness that have thrived in the league. I'm not saying his ceiling is that high, but some draft boards I don't even see him mentioned in the top 60. I think he's an NBA player.
Yeah, like full stop, he's a backup point guard. Like at worst. Like that dude is going to be able to run offenses until he's 35 years old because he's so smart. So yeah, I have him like as a top 50 guy in the class. Pretty clear to me at this stage. Did you by chance, I sent you off a few other names. Did you by chance get a chance to watch, that was really bad English, Dakota Mathias or Kevin Hervey?
I've seen Hervey. I've not seen Mathias. He's on my DVR, so we can talk about Hervey if you want, or you can go into Mathias.
So Dakota Mathias, the only thing I'll say about him is I refuse to listen to any of your Jalen Brunson is TJ McConnell and Matt Dellavedova arguments because that is wholly Dakota Mathias' corner this year. Kevin Hervey, though, 6'8", 7'3" wingspan, shoots the shit out of the ball. What were your impressions when you saw him?
Pretty much that. I mean, he shoots the shit out of the ball. He looks really fluid doing it, even off a little bit of emotion. But the high release point at that size is going to be something to reckon with. The finishing around the rim was pretty poor. I mean, he's not very explosive, but just as a pure shooter, I haven't seen enough of him defensively yet. From what I've seen, I'm not like super sold outside of the length. I didn't really see the dynamic lateral agility or anything like that, but he's definitely someone with that size that could shoot the ball like that. He deserves to be on draft radars as well. I think he's playing on national TV, I want to say, tonight, isn't he?
Yeah, they play Creighton, like as we're recording this podcast. Right now, he's like 2 for 4, 1 of 3 from 3, has 3 rebounds already, 5 points in the first 10 minutes of the game. He's really good. Like he's an NBA player based off of talent, I think. His issue, he has multiple significant knee surgeries in his past. Like my guess is he'll probably get flagged by NBA teams, so he might have to make it as an undrafted guy, or maybe as like a super late second round pick type. But if he's that tall and that long and can shoot the way he can, and you can get anything out of him defensively, I think he needs to improve defensively in a pretty significant way. But if you can get anything out of him defensively, I do think he is an NBA player.
I'm not sure if the knee injuries are currently inhibiting him at all. It seemed like he couldn't really bend as well as some other guys, but there were times where he did sink down in a stance. I'm not sure. I haven't seen enough of him. But where do you have him on your board, like right now in the general range?
Like 60s. Talent-wise, I would have him higher than that. I just know that the knee stuff is going to come up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I've seen some top 45, top 50 rankings of him, and I think that's even fair.
Yeah. I just can't get there. I mean, like I spent a day with them last year, like doing like everything with them, like talking to him extensively and like eating like dinner with him and stuff. Like, I love that dude. I want him to be in the NBA, but I just have some concerns. Is there anyone else that has stood out to you over the last week that you want to chat about before we get out of here?
Honestly, there haven't been that many games like we discussed.
Right.
I think we've discussed most of them today. I can go through my notes. If there's anybody else you want to in the interim, I'll look through and see if I have anybody else.
No, I mean, it was finals week this week, like there's just not a crazy amount of college basketball going on. Maybe we should keep this at a solid, breezy 54 minutes. Cole, tell the people where they can find your work.
You can find me on Twitter at Cole Zwicker. You can find my work. I just did an article on Trae Young and if he's a generational shooter or not, looking at a lot of what we discussed today. More of the off-ball stuff, too, like off the catch, off of motion. So you can check that out at The Stepien. And, of course, continue to tune into this podcast. Probably won't do one next week, or I don't know. That'll be up to Sam. But, we'll break down more interesting matchups as conference play starts.
Might be later in the week, more like Thursday or Friday if we end up doing one. But no, it will not be early in the week because Monday next week is Christmas. Cole, if I don't talk to you before then, have a Merry Christmas. Please remember to go subscribe to the Game Theory Podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Android, wherever you get podcasts. I think we're probably up on there right now, even Spotify. Please go subscribe to The Athletic as well. Keep me employed. That would be terrific. Until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.